There's one game I feel is the biggest honorable mention for the Game of the Year of 2025. Silent Hill F is the game, and I say that because it's the game that's come closest to the amount of time I spent playing, along with my other favorites from 2025 like Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, and Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. And I didn't intend for this. When I first beat Silent Hill F, I was very underwhelmed by its ending, but I saw its huge emphasis of playing the New Game Plus mode to get the other endings, and so I played it again to check out another one, and then my curiosity made me want to play another, and then I couldn't put down the game until I got another, and then for good measure, I got the last ending. And now I absolutely love the story being told, and the way in which it's told, as it felt too familiar, and that even though the story was very different, the vibe in experiencing it is the same, and what makes me love Clair Obscur so much. So I'm going to break down how you experience this story and my interpretation of its endings. And yes, there will be massive spoilers for Silent Hill F, but please join me as we discover what the F stands for in Silent Hill F. The story is about Hinako, a high school student who lives in a rural Japanese town that I do not know how to pronounce. During the 1960s, she has a tumultuous relationship with her abusive father, and not far behind a worsening relationship with her mother, because her mother's acquiescence to her father's abuse and incompetence. Hinako also has an odd relationship with her sister Junko, who moved out after her marriage, but is tested as you see more of her interactions with her sister, as she trusts her sister the most for always coming to her aid when growing up, but feels more betrayed by her sister's choice to go through an arranged marriage and giving up her agency. So one day, Hinako has a fight with her father, to which she leaves home to meet up with her friends, Shu, Rinku, to blow off some steam. Upon meeting up with her friends, strange events start to happen, with a fog monster who starts chasing them, and other monsters creep out of the shadows of the town. So Hinako goes through a journey of finding a way out of town with her friends that turns into a desperate attempt to save them and eventually save herself. Of course, this is what the game is about at face value, but like any good horror story, what happens is to be taken more metaphorically than literally. The metaphor runs even deeper with the Dark World or Dark Shrine parts of Silent Hill F, where Hinako is guided through danger by the character simply known as Fox Mask, but is continuously warned by her childhood doll not to trust him. Here's when I'll get into spoilers. So I recommend, if you're wanting to play the game, then go play it and come back to the video later. Okay. So as Hinako continues on her journey with Fox Mask, she goes through challenges that transform her into being more like a fox, with donning her own mask as well as replacing her arm with a fox arm, even though it looks more like a werewolf arm to me. But the trials she goes through requires her to fight her friends and bring them to their demise. After all, she is set to marry Fox Mask, and what happens from there depends on the ending you get. Throughout the game, Hinako is being pulled different ways between wanting to stay with her friends versus being convinced by her sister and her parents to go through with the wedding. And ultimately, you see there are two versions of Hinako, one for each world you play in. You have Shimizu Hinako, which you play from the start and is on the side of clinging to the past. And then you have just Hinako, who is focused on moving on from the past and is eager to fulfill her arrangement to be married to the Fox Mask. The eagerness to move on is displayed in the form of her literally getting rid of her friends and destroying the town, as it's revealed this version of Hinako is the fog monster that is wreaking havoc on the town. And based on what story plays out that leads to each ending, this is you determining what the F stands for Hinako. Forever. First ending. It's psychosis due to pills her best friend Shu gave her. But was his intentions actually good? First time seeing it, I took it more at face value, even though I know I shouldn't, and now looking back at it, I have more questions, especially about Shu's intention. Was this his way of sabotaging her wedding? You see more in later endings that Shu really does have unresolved feelings for Hinako. And so I can't help but feel that with this ending, it's really him trying to control her life and make it so that she doesn't go through with the wedding. But none of that is completely confirmed. All you know is he's trying to help Hinako with her headaches. But will there ever be an end? Who's to say this cycle of Hinako having these episodes due to the medication won't just repeat forever? After giving more thought to this, feels so twisted and disturbing because I come to learn that Hinako mostly doesn't want things to change. But this is a twisted version of holding on to a forever that really isn't meant to be. Family. The second ending, or as the game recognizes it, the bad ending. This one begins the series of endings that makes the game feel more like Clair Obscur to me. Essentially, these endings are Hinako choosing someone's side. This one is her choosing the Fox Mask, choosing to appease her family and go through with the wedding, but in the end regretting it as she gives up her face and herself as a whole so she can fulfill the expectations of her family and society. I feel this is displayed in such a beautiful way of how, even though she goes through this wedding, which seems to bring at least a contentment amongst her family, it is truly not what she wants, as the ending shows her face on the ground after she has it taken off from going through the wedding, crying and pleading to not want to lose who she is and not fall into the same destiny as her mother. This ending had such a visceral reaction for me that to me it felt like the most terrifying and horrific thing in this game, that this horror story has its horror more in the story than in the gameplay scares that you normally see and come to expect from most horror games. It kind of makes me think a little bit of the game Soma in that regard. Very thought-provoking, many hours after playing the game. And so, this is when my feelings for the game's story started turning around, because I absolutely love these kind of horror stories that are more thought-provoking. It's one of the biggest reasons I love the early Silent Hill games so much, and so that made this one definitely take its place among the quality of the original Team Silent entries in the series, and of course, PT. Friends, the third ending, which is labeled the good ending in the game. Here, Hinako chooses Shu. It is left open to me on if she really chooses him romantically, but rather seems like in general she's choosing friends over love. Seemingly, she's ending up happier in the end, even though it feels like she has stopped growing. I find it interesting that this one is called the good ending, and that upon thinking about it more, it really isn't a good ending, but rather may just be a good ending based on what may be seen as the binary options available when choosing between the fox mask and Shu. Also considering what I said about the first ending, for me personally this feels even less like the good ending, since Shu really was trying to control her with giving her those pills, then ultimately choosing him is just as bad as the unhappiness she feels in the second ending. Which, one thing I forgot to mention is that in order to get any of the endings that are not the first ending, you have to choose to not take the pills, because in the game you are tricked into taking the pills because they are what heals you. And near the beginning of the game you have a forced enemy encounter where after that encounter all you have are the pills to heal you, and the game tells you to take them, and so you trust the game, only to discover that you got the worst ending of all because you're taking pills. So if there's any lesson to learn from the game, if nothing else, don't take pills just because someone told you to take them. But anyways, back to the third ending. I feel it's truly unhappiness because it's just choosing a short-term happiness over her potential long-term happiness. Because as much as we always thought we'd hang on to our friends from our childhood, more times than not, we need to let go. Even if it's to just move on and see our friends less. But from my experience and what I've heard most commonly, most just move on in general. And usually it's for the better. But there is another way. Freedom. The fourth ending, or the true ending as the game says, is where Hinako chooses herself. She chooses her freedom to think more about what she wants and to grow into the adult she is becoming. To not adhere to others' rules strictly, but also not reject them either. She is the happiest here, but this still leaves her down in fog, implying the best way to move on in her life is to find the best middle ground and do what is best for her, regardless on if anyone understands or not. To arise to the new challenges that lie ahead, but also don't lose who you are and what makes you special. There are those who follow and those who will forget, but in the end, you are who you were always meant to be, and that is to be unapologetically yourself. I feel this embodies a lot of my feelings versus the discourse I see around this game in general. As a Silent Hill fan, I love the original games and have always said Silent Hill 2 is my favorite of the series. But to be honest, none of the originals, or even the second game, have compelled me to play them over and over again consecutively like this one has. For me, they always felt like a journey to go through every couple years or so, specifically to experience their styles of horror and stories again. But Silent Hill F made me want to fully experience it right away, and the more I played, the more I enjoyed it. And I still see myself wanting to experience it again every couple years or so. More than its story, I grew to enjoy its mechanics the most. The puzzles I always enjoyed, with only a couple being too vague for me, but most of all, this is the Silent Hill game I enjoy the combat the most. Hot take, I know. The melee mechanics are forcibly clunky, like the classic games, but it allows you to have more defense with dodging and parrying, which I enjoyed quite a bit, especially with the focus system that made it a lot easier. Granted, I opted to play the game on its easiest difficulty regards to combat, because upon release, I kept hearing it was being compared to being like a Soulsborne game, which I'm terrible at. But this one feels more tailored for me. And so playing the game on repeat just got more and more fun, especially as I got the Sacred Sword in the later endings. And of course, I absolutely loved how using the fox arm was, and how it made the combat more doable with the mechanics it brought, like preventing enemy respawn, and its supercharged mode, where she basically becomes invincible and more powerful in attacking, for just a brief time though. So now I'd say Silent Hill 2 is my favorite story in the series, and it is the most psychologically terrifying game in the series as well. But Silent Hill F is my favorite overall gaming experience in the Silent Hill series. With the talks also of adapting games to film or TV, I've found a new appreciation for a certain way of telling a story that can only be done in games and can't be replicated in film or TV. And that's what this game and Clair Obscur have done. It gives you a choice to make where the results of your choices are so bittersweet in the endings that none seem like the perfect answer or ending, but rather each is a test showing the player something about themselves. To an extent, this is similar with the endings in Silent Hill 2, and so maybe what will make it impossible to ever adapt these games and have an adaptation live up to the experience of the games, because in film and TV, you don't have a choice. You just experience what the writer wants you to experience. And so there's always a lesser philosophical experience to be had in contemplating the consequences of one's actions. Of course, some stories find a way to provoke this contemplation, like the first Last of Us story. But does it really impact as well when you're just watching a choice being made, as opposed to you being the one to make that choice? Because in the end, this doesn't just make you think about the choices the character made, but also you question, why did you make the choices to go the path you went? So do I feel Silent Hill F is the game of the year for 2025? No. And you could see my answer to that in my duality of the games of the year video. But I feel that it is best of the honorable mentions for those who didn't even get nominated. But in the end, as the game teaches, none of that matters, as all that does matter is the time spent experiencing it and thinking about what it has to say and how it can help us continue to grow in our lives to become the best who we are meant to be. Also, I forgot to mention the last ending where the game becomes an anime about fighting aliens, which I love because I feel the alien endings in the Silent Hill games, this one is the most consistent with the game's lore and story, but also implies it's another version of Hinako regressing. But it's fun and cute and keeps in line with the tradition of Silent Hill games having a goofy ending suggesting it was aliens the whole time, which also works well with the path of fighting change and choosing one's traditions no matter how absurd they are. But in the end, there's still growth because this time it actually feels less random. This game really is the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you.